In our third class, we worked on the mechanics of writing code. So if you have not watched Lesson 5, please go do so. This is the YouTube playlist, Lesson 5. It talks about passing parameters, and you need to know how to do that. So then I asked everybody to go ahead, and we reviewed it in class a little bit. So I asked everyone to create a function above main that returns an integer, and it takes two integers as parameters. And then I wanted the function to add the two parameters together and return the result. And you can name the function and the parameters anything you like. So then you call your function from inside the main function and see out the result. Okay, so you need to go do this. I really want you to go try and do this. Don't get too frustrated. If you can't, you can come back and watch the answer. But you're going to learn a lot better if you make your own mistakes, figure out what it is you don't know how to do, and at least try to do it first. Okay, so, and then I'm going to show you now in a few seconds how I would do this. So here's Eclipse, and I want a function that returns an int. I'm going to give it a name, add ints, and I'm going to do the simplest. This is called the signature of the function. You can actually do this. You don't have to give your parameters names. It's really not all that useful, but just for teaching purposes, I'm going to do it. And then see, now I have no way to refer to my parameters because they don't have names. But this is the signature of the method. It has a name, add ints, it returns an int, and it takes two ints. So I can say return 0, and now it's a perfectly valid, although somewhat useless function. And down here I can call it. I can call add ints, and I can pass in 0, and I can pass in 0, and then I'm going to kind of get the right answer. And I want to store this in result. So I can say this, and then I can say cout result and put a new line after it, and I can compile, and I can run, and there's 0. 0 comes back. It's great. So the only problem, of course, is if I pass in numbers like 10 and 20, and I recompile and I rerun, I still get 0. So let's make it do what we want. So we need to give these names. So I'm going to call mine value 1, and I'm going to call this one value 2. You might have called yours x and y or anything else. Fred and Ethel. So here's value 1 plus value 2. We use the plus operator to do addition, and now this is going to return the value. So let's we pass in 10 and 20. We should get 30 back. So let's go ahead and build this, and we hit run, and down here we've got 30. So this is great. It's doing what we want. That was the assignment. Now, when some students did this, they used default parameters. So I didn't ask for that, but it was a good thing to do and a good thing to learn. So we're going to go take a look at that. See if you can modify your program to use default parameters for the two integers that are passed in. Then invoke your function a second time from within main. Store that result in a different named parameter, different named variable. I shouldn't say parameter. Then invoke your function a third time and store the result in the original variable. Okay, so go try that. You can just pause this and reread this and then come back. So default parameters. So we want to give this a default value. So if I want to default this one to 10, then this one to 20. So default parameters have to go from right to left. You want to think about that. The first time you define the first parameter that gets a default, all the ones after that have to get a default. So this is legal. Now we could pass just one parameter in, and the second parameter would by default be 20. So we would be adding 20 to whatever number we passed in. We cannot specify the first one and leave the second one unspecified. That is not legal. So that's the legal way to do it. So now to call this, I asked you to put it in a new variable. So I'm going to just call this new result equals add ints, and now you don't have to pass any parameters. Just do that. And I also want to make sure you remember you can hit control space and it'll finish typing for you if you start using longer names. Okay, so let's see out new result. Same thing. I can type control space, and I'll put my new line character in there as well. And let's go ahead and compile that and run that. And we get 30 and 30. So to make it a little more interesting, let's just change our numbers here to 100 and 200. Build. and run. And now we get 30 and 300. Okay, so the final thing I asked you to do was to go ahead and reuse variable. So if you did this, int new result, and you tried to do something like ints 50 and 70, you got errors. You cannot redeclare a variable. You can reuse it, you just can't redeclare it. So that just means don't use the int again. Now the compiler sees new results, says, oh, you want this one. So it's the old result you have will get overwritten with the new result you have. And then let's see out new result. New result, and when you do that control space trick and it finds more than one result, which is what just happened, it gives you a list and asks you to pick which one you want. And then let's put our new line character in. Let's build that, and let's run, and there you go. You get the 30, the 300, and the 120. So we put a new value into new result. Okay, so that was the main intent of the first class. Well, we went one step further, but before I just want to reiterate this idea of the function signature, this bare bones name, so that the return type, the name, and the types of the parameters, that's what the compiler looks at. It doesn't care what names you give these. So if you try and declare two variables called some name with int x, int y, and then int value 1, value 2, it's not going to like it, because as far as it's concerned, these are two functions with the same signature, and it doesn't know how to distinguish between them. Okay, so then I asked everyone to go ahead and move this function to the bottom of main. So I want you all to go try that. Go ahead and put it down here, and then compile and run. And what's going to happen is we're going to get an error. It's going to say, I don't know what this add int is, because the compiler interprets things from the top, or compiles from the top down to the bottom. And when it gets here, it doesn't know what this is because it hasn't seen it yet. Okay, so how can we make it see it? All right, first thing we do is we can copy this line, and we can put it up here. So this is called, before this was a declaration and a definition. So now we're just going to create the declaration. So we're just going to put a semicolon at the end, no body to the function. Okay, so now we're telling it, hey, there's a function that returns an int. Its name is addInt, addInts, and it has two int parameters, and these are their default values if we want to use default parameters. Now, with default parameters, it adds a little bit of wrinkle. You can't have them both in the declaration and the definition. They should just be in the declaration, so that if you call it like this, then it knows what to substitute in. So let's come down here. We don't need them down here any longer, and we don't want them down here any longer. Okay, so now it should see everything from the top down, and when we run, we should get the same results we got before. Okay, now I asked everybody to go ahead and create a .h file. We kind of walked through this. So I'm right-clicking on my project. I'm saying New. I'm saying Header File, and you can give this any name you want. I'm going to call it calculator.h. And I've already done this. I forgot I already did this in this project. Let's just cheat and call it calculator2.h and say finish. Okay, you can see my old calculator h dot here. And we talked about this. This is called an include guard. There's something in C++ called the one definition rule I haven't really told you about yet. But this prevents include files from getting included more than once. For now, just ignore it. Put all your code inside these include guards. And I will mention that there's another way of doing include guards. This is a very portable, well-defined, well-supported, standard compliant way. Microsoft came up with a way, and you'll see it in some of my other code called Pragma Once that does the same thing. It says only do this once. So anyway, so we've got this include file. What I want you to do is go ahead and move this forward declaration out of here, and let's put it in our include file. That's all. So now we have a problem. It's not going to see it, so we're going to get errors. But if we say include calculator, and I see this works too, control space, I'm going to calculator2.h. Now we build and we run, and everything works just like before, and we're on our way to moving things into separate files so that we don't have all our code in the same file. And then we pretty much ran out of time. But the next step is to create a calculator.cpp and move the actual definition into that as well.